Tuesday, and welcome to the MSL Lead Chronicles. It's a podcast on a mission in medical affairs and leadership. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy, Chad Fellers, we're going to have casual talk about important topics and challenges in leadership. And we are so glad you're here. Stay tuned.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles. I am your host, Chad Fellers, with my nifty sidekick, Mary Morton. Mary does not have a little lamb, contrary to popular belief, but she does have many tadpoles. So that's a brief fun fact about Mary. How are you today, Mary?
I'm doing well, and I have now 2 tanks, one with tadpoles, and then they have to transition to, like, when they start like sprouting their back legs, they go into the transition tank. And so I have a bunch of little tiny leopard frogs now.
You have a whole process. Wow.
The third tank has to be had soon when they get their front legs too.
Oh no, they have front legs now. So I think what I'm going to do is, because I bet there's probably still like 250 tadpoles in the other tank. I think I'm just going to have to put them in nature, because I am starting to get the feeling that the tadpoles and the frogs, that maybe I have now handicapped them from being able to survive in the wild because I feed them.
This is a really fascinating conversation that I know that our listeners didn't have any idea that they were going to get today. And that is my fault for opening up that door, trying to be funny and catty on my introduction. That said, I think the listeners are really going to have a lot of good takeaways today in the conversation that we're going to have. I know that we have a variety of listeners out there, those that are currently in leadership title roles, if you will, and then others that are aspiring for leadership, maybe in an MSL role or another medical director, whatever that may look like. But this, I kind of think about is like, what do you do? Can we actually have someone on that has recently made that transition from individual contributor to a position of leadership? And with that, I get to have a conversation. We get to have a conversation with one of my former colleagues that I'm going to let Mary introduce for us.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to take that away from me this time.
Never, Mary.
Today, we are very pleased to welcome to the show Zach Henney. So a little bit about Zach. He is he's a race fan like myself, and his in the Mecca of Indianapolis. He's a graduate of Purdue University, which is one of the schools that Liam is considering for meteorology. So we'll be up checking it out here in about 3 months. But he's actually worked not only with you, but with our buddy Chi.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So Zach is now and currently the recently promoted MSL director at Karyopharm, working in the exciting world of oncology. And I think Chad worked with Zach as well. So.
I did. I got to my first meeting with Zach, I think, was at our home office. And that happened to be in Grand Cayman. So that was a great experience that lasted for maybe 9 months or so. But nevertheless, it was still, maybe should have known something. That should have been a clue that the home office was located in Grand Cayman. I'm not real sure. Nevertheless, at the very minimum, we got to get out there and enjoy that. That was what, back 2017, Zach?
Yeah, feels like a long time ago now. Lots happened.
It does. Well, again, thanks so much for hopping on today. I'm really excited about this. You know, we talk about this whole transition, but I mean, you were fresh in this, in the midst of the transition. And I thought it would the royal we, Mary and I thought, actually she drives a lot of our conversations, to be honest with you, the different topics, but what a perfect conversation, I think, for our listeners. So let's dig in with that. But as customary with our podcast, we like to start with the key takeaways that the listeners can walk away with from our discussion. So Zach, why don't you share those with us?
Yeah, so my key takeaways for those sort of aspiring leaders that maybe are about to transition into a leadership role is really don't rush the titles. If you're building the right skill sets, those opportunities will come. Sometimes it's like, oh, I can get senior right now if I'm willing to, go build a whole new reputation at a whole new organization. I can tell you, keep building your skill set and those opportunities will come. If you are transitioning into a leadership role, have an impact early, but don't try to tackle everything. You're not going to fix all of an organization in 90 days. It's really hard. Have the impact that you can, get the early wins when you can, and then build for the future. And then, the number one thing everyone can be doing, whether you're an aspiring leader or already a leader, is just build your network. The bigger your network, the more folks know what you're aspiring to be. And you have to say, like, hey, this is something I'm trying to attain. This is where I want my career to go. And the more sort of open and transparent I've been with my network, the more those opportunities have come to me of, I'll get you on an interview panel. I'll get you an opportunity to talk about it, even maybe before you're ready. Those experiences are really helpful.
I love it. Those are going to be, those are great takeaways. And you're not just saying these things and making them up. You've actually lived those out. I've seen you live those out. I remember having conversations. I can't remember where we were. We were getting into an elevator somewhere, but you were talking about, it wasn't Grand Cayman, I don't think, in this particular scenario, but it was like, I think that you were thinking even about leadership and kind of where you wanted to go and all that. And that was 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years ago now. So why don't we start there? You're talking about just this whole preparation. Would love to hear a little bit about how you worked and just kind of your journey to get where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm a PharmD by background. I went to Purdue, boiler up for any Boilermakers watching. And then I did a postdoc fellowship with Northeastern University out in Boston at an infectious disease company called Cubist. Got bought out by Merck long ago, but really had what I would call a best-in-class medical affairs organization at the time. And so really sort of got to learn the ropes fast and get up to speed in in-house medical affairs, a lot of medical communication, a lot of medical information. Moved to Boston to do that. Ended up, when they were bought out, went to Shire, worked in-house on their global ADHD portfolio in medical communications, and really was working to launch a drug and creating all the content for field medical, going and delivering that training to the field team, and then going, well, wait, if I'm an MSL, I can live anywhere in the country. I could move back home to Indiana, a very passionate Hoosier, bring some research back to the Midwest, have an impact closer to home. And so ended up taking that opportunity in 2017 with a competitor to Shire, really, in the ADHD space. That was my first MSL job. I was the first MSL hired. Again, talking about network, it was a Shire colleague that had gone over there to build out their medical affairs organization. They call with opportunities and you go. So I was the first MSL hired. That's all about reputation building. And then, I was the 14th employee of the company. So sometimes when you're on your journey, you have to take some risks. And as Chad, I think, already alluded to, it didn't necessarily work out, but it helped me progress to where I wanted to go. So from there, I went to a couple of other organizations on field medical and sort of like varying levels of leadership on an MSL team. So I went to DOVA, worked in liver disease and benign hematology. They were purchased. I ended up going to Bluebird Bio on their gene therapy program. Really interesting science there. And then about 2.5 years ago, came to Karyopharm. They have an approved drug in the myeloma space, some really fantastic research going on in both solid and heme, and really came to an organization in change. They were already sort of commercializing a product, and then they had these sort of research that was nearing phase 3 and getting ready to go, looking for a team with more experience in that pre-launch phase and what can we do there. So started as a principal MSL, then became the hematology lead for the field. And then, as we alluded to a little bit about 3 months ago, became the MSL lead for the country. And I think, like many other MSL leaders, you go from 0 direct reports to 10 direct reports overnight. and without any classes in between. And so you're really sort of learning management while having a big sort of group of people trusting you to lead them.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I
That's
have
a
a
lot.
question to hop in here, and it may be actually going to the third takeaway if we can like do it out of order. Um, you were talking about the importance of building your network and surrounding yourself with people who understand what your career goals are, um, and where you want to go with that. So as we're thinking back, like and I think you and Chad kind of talked about that a little bit ago, but at what point in your career did you know, and I do believe it's a calling, that being a leader of people, a developer, you know, when did you realize that was the case?
That's a good question. I think probably pretty early, right? I think many of us, if Chad's experience too, before you're even in pharma, you find yourself in leadership positions, either in organizations that you're a part of or companies you're a part of. And so, I think for me, once I had a footing as being an MSL, probably in those early days, I was pretty upfront that like, hey, I'm going to lead a team one day. This, I love meeting with KOLs, doing study work, etc. But my passion is really in developing people and having that larger impact by really enabling people to meet their own personal goals. I think that's priority number one sometimes, and then priority 1.5 is what are the company's priorities right now, and how do we achieve those in tandem with where you're trying to go.
I think one of the things that really stands out to me, Zach, just about your journey, there are people that are very driven, and oftentimes a consequence of that, it's more about an focus on themselves and where they want to get to, and they will go at all costs to be able to get there. And I think one of the things that's always been striking to me, we always talk about EQ versus IQ, and that you've definitely got IQ, but that was one of the things that always stood out to me with you is you have such a high level of EQ, and I think that that's been definitely beneficial to you in your journey. You also don't step over people. You're still always looking to support, and you've been intentional. I think that that's it. I mean, I think you've been very intentional with the different moves that you've made. Now, some of them may have, or the paths that you've taken, right? Maybe not all of them have led to where you thought they were going to, but ultimately they have helped shape you to have the opportunity that you do right now. So I love that. I think that is great. You can be both, right? You can be driven to achieve your goals, and you can still do it in a way that is uplifting to those that are around you. And so that's just a comment and an observation that I have seen you really show over the years. Let's talk about that, though. When we think about the transition, you mentioned earlier, you talked about going from no reports to 10. So that is a mindset shift. So can you talk a little bit about about the mindset shift that you've had to have during this time, and what that's looked like?
Yeah, so all of a sudden it becomes not really about your own sort of personal achievement, but what are we doing as a collective with that bigger group. So for me, it goes from like, what am I trying to accomplish today or this week or this month, to like, what does the team need to accomplish and what do they need to accomplish that? So I think, I sort of prescribe to the servant leadership model. So to be sort of that first rung of the ladder leading to everybody's success is like, they have to be equipped with, what do I need you to do? What do I want you to do above and beyond that? And what do I need to do to make everyone else get out of your way or to empower you? And it is a challenge, right? These big organizations, especially if you're coming into something mid-year, they have their mind made up. They know what's been happening for the last year, 2 years. You come in as a new leader, new ideas, maybe an external perspective. Maybe you're not getting internally promoted, but coming from the outside, and all of a sudden there's these new opportunities. And sorry, apparently do not disturb is not do not disturb. There we go. So I think for me, it's just been about setting the team up for success, and then let me catch up on everything else while they're out there being successful. So, for me, like that first couple of weeks, it was check in with your people, make sure people are good. Oftentimes, you're gonna have other folks that interviewed for the role that you got maybe on your team. You're gonna have folks that were really dedicated to the previous leadership, and we all have to sort of like understand, accept that loss, and what does the company need to do to keep things going, and what can the team do now that's maybe different than what they were doing before. So really allowing that time for everyone to come along the journey with you, and then start really getting to your cross-functional partners and laying the foundation of, here's the team I have, here's what's great about them, and here's how the next 96 180 days are going to look. And then, do that in the confines of 30-minute Zoom meetings with 10 people on them.
Yeah, I was trying to be respectful because I thought Mary was going to hop or chime in and say something real quick, or as a follow up to that. Were you?
Actually.
Okay, go for it.
You read me like a book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think it's a challenging spot to be in, right? If you and at least one other person in your organization are sort of vying for the same job, it stinks to be in either position for a little while, right? Because it stinks to be the one that didn't get the job. And then it's also uncomfortable a little bit for the one who did, especially if you're compassionate like you are, that, there's no intent to hurt anybody's feelings. So with that, I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about when you do become a people leader, you have to let go of some of that in the trenches with the science, having the scientific conversations one-on-one directly yourself. Can you tell us about how that was for you?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm 100% there. Still training up the backfield, still getting some interactions here and there. But I think as a leader, you can't, I always say, like, I want to be, as good as my best MSL, but there's going to be a point where you're pulled in so many directions where, you hope that your best MSL could outperform you in a KOL interaction. And so that, especially for high performers, is a tough pill to swallow. But it also means that you're a good leader, right? If you know the right person on your team to be in an interaction, regardless of, where that thought leader lives, I mean, so much more power to you to say, oh, this is a person that's going to connect really well with this KOL. Let's put them in the same room. So I'm trying to be proactive in my mindset of like, I'm not always the best one to go solve a problem or have a discussion. Really, it's who's on the team best equipped and how do we facilitate. But I agree, like, the first time you let it go, or you give you do an introduction to your favorite KOL and go, oh gosh, I'm going to see you maybe once a year if I'm lucky. It's a little anxiety inducing. Yeah. Cause you build up these relationships, how well taken care of your territory might be. And so, you just don't want to leave those people with any worse than they were before.
I often think
feel like it's fair to accept that you're going to deal with that a little bit. I kind of compare this, like if I have somebody who is interviewing for the backfill of the person who just got promoted, one of the things I say to them is like, you have to kind of consider this like, you're the kindergartner teacher and they're about to hand their kindergartner to you. And they've been all theirs for 5 years and now they're going to see you all day long. And so they're, so it's got to be.
And all of a sudden you get, instead of like a 30-second snippet about a doctor, you get a dissertation before you even walk in the door, and you're like, oh gosh, I have to know everything. So when I joined Karyopharm, I took over the previous people leaders territory. And so, it was warm introductions. It was, here's a dissertation on everyone, and here's all the, ISTs I got them involved with, don't mess up. But also, you get going in the field so much faster, which is a tremendous opportunity, but also a responsibility, right? Of like, that person can easily dump a ton of interactions on you, and you might be certified, but you might not be comfortable meeting with your top doctor yet. And so I think getting your leader to understand, like, if you're taking over their territory, especially like, hey, I'm ready for this, but like, let me warm up here.
Just thinking through this too, I think for me, one of the reasons or one of the things I found challenging when I stepped away from really that's the individual role to the regional to the national was a few years ago. That was a lot of unknowns as far as the different things that I need to get done. It seems like the further you move up as well too, it may be hard to garner feedback and those types of things about things that are going really well. Usually it's when things are not going well or they need something from you versus the things that are being spotlighted like you may have had in the past. I think there's a tendency to try to hold on to some of those things because you know that you're bringing value. And so I think that that's oftentimes a struggle for some because that's one thing that they know that they can control. It was one thing that I knew that I could control because I did really well. That's
and you
what
can knock it out of the park, right? Like,
that's
there's
right.
no question here.
That's
Whereas
right.
everything you're doing for the first time, whether it's in a leadership role or shifting from field to strategy, there's just an anxiety of like, this is the first time I've done it. Am I doing it right?
That's right. That's right. And you want to do well, right? Because you were so driven. I mean, you've been driven the entire time in the other roles. And so, yeah, so that certainly can be a challenge. So you mentioned servant leadership earlier. One of the things that I think that I hold really in high regard is the need to be able to grant trust to those that are on your team. But I know it's also receiving granted trust from your team to a leader is not always there as well too, or it's to a limited degree. You really have to kind of earn trust in their eyes to really for them to get behind you and the things that you're wanting to do different and all those types of things. Can you think of any examples or even just talk about the importance of really establishing that trust and maybe a way that you've done that in your first 90 days? You may have not had that opportunity, but would love to hear if you have.
Yeah, they definitely have to trust you to represent them in the best light, right? Like everywhere around pharma, GMSA is always sort of like fighting for its place at the table. And so, you definitely have to start building up that trust that you're representing them well, up and out within the organization. And the number one way that they can hear that is just feedback from those people that they know you're talking to, right? So, does your VP of Med Affairs join your team call every once in a while and ask them, hey, mention highlights that you've seen from the team that you liked, maybe that you communicated up to the C-suite. Same thing if you have strategy leads on your team. What were the insights that were impactful? What are the changes you made recently because of the MSL team? And they'll start getting that trust that, oh, I'm not just submitting these insights into a black hole. Zach is really communicating our value up and out in a powerful way. And, as you can, you share what you're sharing up to your team of saying like, hey, every week, these are the things that people care about the most. This quarter, the scrutiny is on this, this, and this. We need to execute on it. That's why you have these goals. And the number one thing, I think I try to do as a leader on my team is not just say, these are your KPIs or this is what we're trying to do this quarter, but here's the why we're trying to accomplish it from a medical perspective, because you're going to have scientists on your team, from a business perspective, because everyone in small organizations, you have to understand the business that you're working within and how your team is impacting that. And then just organizationally, right, there's a lot of growth going on in a lot of these companies. So how is what you're doing this quarter going to build so the quarter after you can do something else?
Oh, he's speaking your language, brother.
Everything.
Chad and I have stayed in touch, not working together for 7 years. We think a lot alike in this space.
Kindred spirits, separated birth.
Yeah, I mean, I heard what I'm usually one that paints a long story to get to the point. But what I heard out of that, Zach, was you have to be intentional with the things that you do, and whether it's a KOL that reached out to you like we just talked about, and then you could easily respond to whatever their question was, or do you pause for a minute, pass that along to the MSL, and CC that and let them be the one that responds. That builds that trust. Are you doing all those little bitty deposits as well? You're intentional to bring the VP to the conversation. All those types of things are just cogs in a wheel, I guess, if you will, to really make things run smooth. So I love it. So when we think about challenges maybe that you've experienced within the first 90 days, maybe even ones that you weren't expecting. Can you think about those? I know that you're so business minded and have that high EQ. Maybe you had a full understanding of what to expect. Maybe that's even from your predecessor or not. But I would love to hear that once you actually got into the role, what was the thing that became a challenge that you had no idea about?
Yeah, I think you sort of understand some of these things, but you don't necessarily know what it's like to be in the reality of that. And that is sort of like the timeline that you have to action in a leadership role, right? Like, it doesn't matter if a request is on Friday at 3. Many of the times, it's got to get done before your weekend starts, right? And I think the more you move up an organization, the more, things become a little bit more urgent, a little bit more impactful. You get pulled into more things where maybe you weren't on the initial team, but you're getting pulled in at the last minute, probably because people respect what you're bringing to the table. There's opportunity. So I think just timelines shrinking, you have to be ready for. And then like one that's just sort of like, it's fun. And like, I had never expected this to be a barrier, but like, you have to get really good at just creating slides for executives that have like, different priorities than you, different attention spans than you. And so like, as an MSL, you're not creating slides all that often to report out like interesting ways of showing data. But as a leader, I mean, all of the time, it's how can I portray this in a way that my team can understand, my executives can understand, my cross-functional partners can understand. And so like, that's just been one fun thing of like, I need a graphic artist on staff. I need some support, just like creating all of these, new presentations that you're building as a leader that as an individual contributor, like totally not on your radar.
Yeah, that's actually leading into one of the questions I was going to ask you is, did you learn anything about you that surprised you so far? Maybe it's that, you're really good with Canva or creating presentations, but maybe it's something else. Like anything that surprised you that's like, wow, I'm kind of a badass at this.
I'm definitely not a Canva expert. That has not been the skill that I uncovered. I think the support that I have within the organization, that's sort of been the number one thing that, came through really strongly and clearly, but also maybe wasn't like the number one thing I expected of just, if you're a leader within your organization and you get an opportunity, people surround you with like support for that and they want to see you succeed. And so, just embrace that, take advantage of it early. Really, I think just sort of that support I had internally for people really thinking, I was a good fit for the role, great opportunity. That's been really good.
I'm thinking through this, and I think we've talked about this a lot over this past year. I mean, thinking about making the transition, all of a sudden we have this mindset of we've been promoted, and so there is this. We put this expectation on ourselves that we have to know all the answers, or we can't ask the questions, or we can't ask for help. And I love the fact that you are surrounded by people that are willing to support you in doing that, and that you're humble enough to be able to ask for those types of things. And that speaks to your desire for your team to be successful as much as it is about you having individual success. And so I would just say, and that's something that I think if I'm being honest, I still struggle with that. About not wanting to, it's pride in ways. And so how can we let that down? It's like the, I guess Harvard Business Review, I think I talked about this as well too, like about asking questions and curiosity. And that's the number one thing that I look for when I'm hiring people, those that are asking questions, that want to know and really dig into the why, those types of things. For some reason, the more as we get older or as we get higher up in our positions, we tend to lose that curiosity as well, and being inquisitive because we feel like we have to have all the answers. And so
Yeah, it's really key, right? You have to give yourself grace first of like, I don't know everything right now, or especially if you're joining a new organization, like I don't even know the players at the table, right? Give yourself grace and then be upfront with folks, right? Here's what I'm going to deliver. Here's what I want feedback on. Build your trust network so that you can get feedback appropriately from folks that are in the room where it's like, how did that go? And make sure it's someone where like when they say it went well, you believe them, or when they say it didn't go well, here's what you should work on, that you're open to that feedback, right? So find that trust network internally, and then turn on the curiosity. We just were lucky enough to hire someone from the outside, and so the first thing I told my new hire was, when you see things that you were doing other places that we haven't integrated, let's talk about it. Has it been a conscious decision not to do something, or is it an opportunity for growth? And so, letting your team members sort of drive, curiosity or different opportunities for your team to do more is something I'm trying to build in the culture at my team.
Yeah, it's creating environments. It's creating it's almost like it's digging the soil, right? Getting that ready to plant the seeds and let them grow as they will, but not just hovering over those types of things. Our role is just to create the environment, like you mentioned, just for that type of mindset. So that's really great. All right, Mary, what were you going to ask?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that speaks to the episode we did with Deanna Tucker. Sorry, I was
another former colleague of mine who I love.
Oh, from Dova. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Deanna Tucker was on with us talking about developing cultures of psychological safety, which sounds like that is just authentically the style that you embrace, which is, I mean, why I think that you're going to be probably one for all of us to keep an eye on as a leader to follow. But I wanted to kind of dig in a little bit more on the second takeaway that you mentioned about, have an impact early, but don't try to fix or do or change everything all at once. So can you elaborate a little bit more on?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully when you're taking on the role, right, you've had a little bit of opportunity to analyze what's going on, right? If they're bringing you in, there's some sort of opportunity. There might be some gaps they're trying to fill, and so figure out what's sort of like the thing that has to get fixed right now, or like we don't have a foundation to work on, right? As long as those are taken care of, everything else is sort of like learning mode for me. And so, I really took on like, here's the gaps that I see that we could immediately improve things, right? So like a good example on my team, we had really neglected continuing education for a long time. So I immediately implemented a kind of like aggressive rate of journal clubs. We have 3 disease states that we support. So I'm like, we need to be talking about this more. There's a ton of data that's come out that we haven't reviewed. Let's get on a timeline and let's do this a little bit more frequently. Get buy-in from your team that they want to learn and move there. Getting my team into different places, being more formal than we were before around like, this is the go-to person for this. This is the go-to person for that. If you haven't talked to them yet and you come to me, I'm going to point you back to the team member that's sort of the point person. And so let's empower each other and be a part of that. But like, look, there's a ton of things I would love to do. And so like some of them are on the like right now, and some of them are like 2025, let's go do it. And some of them are in 2025, let's plant seeds. So in 2026, no one's upset when we push there, right? And so, your field team can't take over the world or the company in a month, right? So, what are those quick wins you can get? What are the things that establish, hey, this new leader having a positive impact, growing the organization, setting a foundation for the future, and then just start planting your seeds for the things that are a quarter out, a year out, etc. And, even though you could really buckle down or not take a day off and get those things done, like it's okay for there to be room for growth in the future, right? We're never going to reach the top of this mountain. The rules just reset, or the company just resets. Or like, I'm yet to be somewhere where I felt like we were at the pinnacle and we just stayed there all the time.
Reorganizations, all those types of things. Yeah, that's so good. I mean, I think that you are very grounded. I think I struggle with that because I'm such this, maybe it's my neurodivergence, I'm not sure, but I get all these different ideas and,
Yeah, again, this episode sponsored by.
yeah, that's right. Like,
No, I think you're totally right. Like we just did this the zone training, right? But one of the things they talk about is engaging as your whole person, and one of the aspects of that is grounded, right? What's the reality of the impact here? What is it actually going to change? And one of the other elements, to your point, Chad, is action. And sometimes we get so focused on like we need to make an action or we need an initiative with our name on it, that we just go do something rather than making sure like it's grounded to what the team wants to accomplish, what the organization wants to accomplish. And sometimes it's a good double check. Like I took a picture of this, sort of like vision of how to engage as a whole person. And like sometimes we get so distracted by one of these categories that we forget about the rest.
talk a little bit about, yes, speaking of neurodivergence, let's go wherever the thought takes me.
Where's the left turn headed?
Oh, I crack myself up sometimes. I've got the worst humor, but anyway, I've learned to live with it over the past 48 years. So thinking about this whole interplay, I'm seeing how all these are connected, right? So you're talking about the small things, the blocking and tackling, if you will, the things that can be knocked out quick. The more you can show those, it's not about what you did. It's about what the team did. The team gets recognized by or what those small things are, or what are seemingly small, or the things that are crucial that need to be fixed. There's a recognition of that, which builds into, okay, the things that I do really do matter. And so it inspires a team that wants to start doing more. And then all of a sudden, it increases the belief that the things that they are doing can really change or shape the trajectory of the company. So starting small actually leads to big things, right? Or actually sets the foundation for big things to come. And that's a great approach. That's a great approach to doing that.
Yeah, I think it's all about building momentum, right? So in the early days, even if your impact or your snowball is small, just start building the momentum so that when you get further out, you can see like how much your team, yourself has grown or impacted the organization. And, you know, I was just using this analogy earlier this week with my team of like, look, for the first time in how long, we're building momentum. We can't let it stop. We can't take time off of that. We have to do our day job and keep building this momentum with the organization.
Let's talk about feedback, right? You mentioned that a few minutes ago as well too. So with what is your approach to gaining feedback about your transition into the leadership role? Has that even, again, knowing that you're fresh into this, I'm not saying that you should have all the answers on these things, and so it's okay to say, I haven't done that or thought about that, but I'm curious, you were talking about the feedback component of it. Have you put any of that in play, and how do you continue to refine yourself?
Yeah, so I think you have to have check-ins with folks that you're impacting, right? And so whether it's, depending on how far out within the organization you are, maybe that's, once a month, maybe that's weekly, maybe that's once a quarter, right? And being upfront with them, like, hey, it's okay to give me feedback. It's okay if it's critical. I definitely want you to tell me. I don't want it to like go around the organization to get back to me. That's not going to help anyone. That's just going to build a weird narrative somewhere that I then have to go quash. And so for me, I tell people all the time, like, how am I doing? What do you need from my team? Here's my vision for the team and how we're going to impact your piece of the organization. And, if that's off, let's talk about it. If not, I'm going to run with it. And then, just, open up those opportunities. So, I always sort of like have those conversations, especially like your other GMSA leaders, right? Of like, hey, it's okay to tell me like, why didn't the team do X, Y, Z? Especially if you're rebuilding or remolding, like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we missed that one. Let's make sure we don't miss it when it comes back around next month, next quarter, next year, and start putting in place systems to help all of us. And so, I try to be intentional with that feedback. I'm sure every organization does a 360 feedback where you get some anonymous love or hate mail, and then you're trying to see who did that come from? Like I think it's just much more applicable in our working world now of just be upfront with folks that they're delivering for you well. Don't be afraid to like share the love when people do a good job. Like if you have a recognition system, like put it out there, make it public. When someone helps your team or helps you, like put it out there. And same thing, if you need more from someone, you have to be, even though you're a new leader, you have to be willing to say like, hey, I need this too. And that is like probably the scariest thing ever, right? The first time you're, a people leader, you go to another people leader and go like, I need your group to deliver this. Like there's, here's the rationale, but like, I just need it done. And that anxiety is real, but they're used to getting it from other people, right? Just because you're new doesn't mean your role shouldn't be doing it.
That's right. That's right. And again, it's all about approach as well, too, of how you do that. What you said earlier is something I think that when I was leading people is I finish every conversation is, what do you need from me, and what can I do to make your job better or easier? And I can't always do those things, but just giving the space to be heard, I think is one of the significant things that can be done. Active listening with that to validate those types of things, or even maybe correct some misconceptions, whatever that may look like, or being able to expand and give a bigger picture of the why we couldn't move forward with this or that and the other. So I love that you do that. And I like how you're applying that even to your cross-functional partners. I think about the conversation we had with Chi, or actually we didn't have it. It was me had with Chi. Me and Chi, we talked about that around like with your cross-functional partners. And he made the comment about like I asked them, okay, is this hitting the mark, or here are my thoughts. I'm not necessarily asking what do you need from me, but I'm going to put this forward. I would love your feedback on this, and if this is not addressing the things that you need, please let me know. Always having that business mindset of how can I think about the things that the business needs, and how can that translate into my job or into my team? Is it something that we can incorporate? Is it something that's not in our lane? Those types of things, but can we say yes to those? But that comes with asking the questions. So it's a both and. So I would definitely keep that should never stop, right? Whether you're a leader that's been working for 90 days, or if you've been like Mary, who's been around for 90 years. I mean, I think that you have to ask that question all the time. Always,
every time. I was just thinking the last time, how long had been since you referred to me as your mother? And I'm like, oh, this is so nice. No, I'm like
grandma.
Sidekick.
Oh, 90 years, 9 years. I mean, you still look like my younger sister. How about that?
Okay.
That help?
It helps.
Keep trying.
I'm still not old enough to be your mother. I would have been 7 when I had you. Stop.
Okay, I will. All right. So this has been good. I think as we're getting ready to wrap things up, Zach, here in the next few minutes, you talked about asking the questions, asking for feedback. You mentioned about continuing education for your team and building that. Are there things that you've been able to put in place yet to continue your leadership development, whether it's a mentor, whether it's John Maxwell, I mean, whoever it might be? Has that even been something you've had to, I mean, with 10 people that you've just started, that you're responsible for, you may have not had that time to even think through that, but knowing that's important, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think already I had some of it in place, but things that I took, started to really actively engage, in conjunction with taking leadership role is sort of like internal or external folks that I trusted for feedback, right? So I chatted with this gray-haired guy who has a podcast and said like, hey, this is how this is going. Does this feel right to you? Is everything going on okay? So I have one of those old mentors back there. And then other...
Old, I heard it. Y'all all heard that out there, right?
Aged like a fine wine. Go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
Arkansas wine, right?
Arkansas wine. That's right. That's moonshine, rather. Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Former colleagues where it's like, hey, I'm going to implement this idea. If someone implements on your team, what would be your reaction, positive, negative, or indifferent? And then I had never had sort of like more formal programs for mentoring, but I have an executive coach, which I would recommend for folks if your organization engages with one of those. I think they're a really great person to have on your side. That's sort of like a third party outside the organization to be able to say like, here's a conflict I'm about to walk into. Help me prep for it. What am I not expecting? Because they talk to leaders all day, every day who have been through everything. And sometimes even one time I showed up with nothing. He's like, you're a first time leader. You need to hear this and this and this. That's helpful. I have an internal sort of like executive mentor. You can get really more like company specific things. Not every company is going to offer that, but you can informally ask like, hey, VP of another department or people leader in a different department that doesn't impact mine, could we connect every other week and just talk about how leadership is going and identify folks within your organization that think like you, lead like you, that you can really sort of like build that bond with. And then, I'm going to take it another step further. You have to start giving it back now that you're in that role. So who can you start mentoring? Maybe your team, but maybe someone outside of your team in your organization where now you have sort of a platform to say like, where else in the organization can I help raise someone up? And I think that's sort of the next step for me of just like, who else could we bring up in the organization that, you can support?
Did you ask ChatGPT or something for all these answers? Holy cow. How long have you been in your role, Zach?
Let's see. That would be 3 months and 8 days. Yeah.
I was close to the 90 days when I was thinking about the title of this. All right. So,
meant to be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. This whoever that gray-haired old man was that you're referencing, all I would say is my guess is he would love to come work for you or work alongside you one day. I mean, I think you are definitely on the right track. I think you're inspiring others as well too. Everything from being intentional to get diversity in the different types of roles that helps be able to paint this picture now that you're in a leadership position. The business mindset that you have as well too. The importance of relationship development. The skill sets that you've acquired along the way have not been in vain, and you're being intentional in ways to be able to leverage those, as well as setting yourself to sustain that growth in the future as well too. So I've learned a lot today, Zach. You've inspired me to be a better leader as well too, and I have some application points that don't include getting my hair colored. Maybe I should reconsider that now, though, since I'm known as the gray-haired old man. Or is it white, Mary? What are you going to say? Smart. I see you're about to say something that you think you're cute, and it's really not. Go ahead.
I think I'm cute. That's what I was going to say.
I think you pull it off well.
Well, Zach, I mean, you were doing so well. Oh, wait. You were complimenting me. I thought you were complimenting Mary on saying she was cute. I was about to say that just
both and leave it at that.
That just ruined the entire thing. I was believing things so much, and I'm just joking. All right, Mary, what were you going to say?
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure that I deferred to you before we wrap things up. Go ahead.
Okay, well, then I will say one thing, since I have 15 seconds that I can probably say something, and that is I have pages and pages of notes, and I would say I learned from you. For any super duper experienced MSL leaders out there who think you know it all and you have nothing to learn from a 92-day old MSL director, you stand mistaken. There's plenty that I learned. And I mean, I honestly believe this leadership journey takes a village, and we all learn from each other constantly. And I think I may have just maybe I segued for you. Thank you so much for joining us. I have learned a ton.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I think the platform you've created to talk about leadership in a less formal, none of us are wearing a suit. We're not even sure Chad has shoes on right now.
He doesn't.
Oh my gosh.
Picking up the flops. All right, all right.
On with him.
Just this forum to talk about leadership in a consistent place, bring in people from across the pharma world that are really in areas of interest, that have experiences that people can learn from. I think is huge. It was definitely an unmet need in the space that you guys identified. So thank you for what you're doing to creating this platform. I can't wait to see where you guys take it in the future. And yeah, anytime you need me, just reach out.
I can't wait. I'm thinking, man, let's have him back in a year to see, okay, how did the first year go? Let's talk about this. What have you learned since then? Yeah, write it down for us, because I think of these ideas, but I don't always pull them through. We definitely want to be able to pull this one through. Don't acknowledge that and say yes, Mary.
I mean, no. What are you talking about?
I mean, my mom would do something like that. So anyway, all that being said, Mary is exactly right. The only way that we can really advance our leadership skills in a timely manner that's important for our teams and the people that we serve is to lean on others, not to try to do this all on our own. We don't develop in isolation. Leaders learn from leaders. And until then, look forward to our next conversation on MSL Lead Chronicles. Have a good one.